Is your small business growing? That's the question we address right here on the Grow Your Biz Show. It's where we interview strategic entrepreneurs who inform and inspire you on your solopreneur or small company journey. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Grow Your Biz Show. Welcome to another episode of the Grow Your Biz Show. I'm your host, Paul Madsen, and I am the founder of GrowMedia.com. GrowMedia.com helps small business owners like you to find your greatness and help your market niches want you and find you too. GrowMedia.com, please check it out. I would like to thank our sponsor for the day. ActionCoachOmaha.com is the global leader in business coaching for small businesses and businesses of all sizes. If you need to clarify your business and if you need to have some accountability in your business, contact Jim Barger at ActionCoachOmaha.com. I am so excited about this episode of this show because it doesn't get any better than this, Mindy. I am here at the Pinnacle Bank Arena with Mindy Zemrak. And Mindy, tell them what you do.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me.
Welcome to Nebraska again.
Yes, thank you. So we are here in Lincoln. We are having an open casting call for season 11 of Shark Tank.
Open casting call right here in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yes, sir.
How did you pick Lincoln, Nebraska for that?
That's a great question. So actually the Angler program at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln reached out and asked if we would ever consider doing an open call here. And we usually go to bigger markets and larger cities. And after some time and discussions, it actually ended up. So they brought us out here and we had an amazing event last night. And we have the open call actually happening right now behind us.
Well, that's what's cool. We're right here live in the mix of it. All those people are lined up waiting to pitch their pitch to Shark Tank.
Yes.
How many assistants, Mindy's the head of casting for the program, how many assistants do you have here listening to pitches?
We have about 4 casting associates and a producer with us. And then, so we have 4 here, including myself as 5. And then back in Los Angeles, we have 7 more people on our team that are going through online submissions and getting video submissions in and everything. It's a well-oiled machine.
Big job. I call it 50% of the success of Shark Tank is because of you.
Oh.
I mean, seriously, I was in recruiting and headhunting and placement for many years. And sure, you have the company wanting to hire a person, but without a person, what do they have? Nothing. So
that's true.
You know, the sharks are the sharks, right? I mean, they're dramatic. They're billionaires, millionaires, and cool people. But without the people you bring to them, it's not a show.
That's true. Yeah. No, we're a close team.
Sure.
Kind of a well-oiled machine, and we
Tell
have a lot of fun.
Tell us the process of how people get from here to TV.
Absolutely. So it's very lengthy. We do tell everyone it can be almost a year-long process, 12 to 14 months potentially. But the first step is they can either apply online or they can come to an open call. They give our team a 1-minute pitch, much like they're on the show. We ask a couple follow-up questions, and then that's it. We go back to Los Angeles. We tell the producers about what they have going on, and if they want to move forward, then they give them more information and more paperwork, and they start that whole process, and then maybe they'll end up on the show.
Yeah. Well, how many hundreds or thousands of pitches have you heard over your career?
I've heard, I don't even have an estimate, tens of thousands at this point. I've been on the show since season 1, and this is season 11, so it's a lot.
Season 11, 10 years. I mean, I don't know a lot about Hollywood, but I think 2 things. First of all, shows never last that long, 10, 11 years.
These days, it's a rare thing.
And people in jobs like you have don't last that long. Tell us about the reason that happened.
Both
one. Why you managed to ride that comet so long, and why the show remains popular so long.
Absolutely. I started on the show season 1. I was very fortunate to work with Mark Burnett on other shows, and now he works. Well, he's president of MGM Unscripted, and the show kept going, and I like to think I did a good job, so that's why I was hired back.
Well, how many shows? You've been on a dozen other shows?
Oh
or
God,
something?
I don't even know how many, but I've worked in Japan on a show, in Morocco. I'm going to go to Fiji later this year for another show. So
I got to do a sidebar.
Yeah.
I got to ask you about. I survived a Japanese game show. Yes. How long did that run? And
sure. So I survived a Japanese game show.
It has nothing to do with why you're here.
It doesn't.
But I can't not ask.
Of course. It was a show where we took Americans. We brought them to Japan for 3 to 4 weeks.
Wow.
We put them on a Japanese game show
to
win money, and it was on ABC. It was 2 seasons.
Really?
So I went to Japan for both years and helped kind of manage the cast while we were there. And it was insane,
Yeah.
but also incredible.
Some interesting language barriers.
Oh,
Is the
yes.
show done
I
in
learned
English or what? Or-
Yeah, partially. The actual game show was done in Japanese.
Yeah.
But then our contestants all spoke English, so it was kind of this delicate balance.
Yeah.
And I learned a little bit of Japanese. I know how to say "kanpai," which basically means cheers.
Okay.
So.
I know to point out a menu, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, but it was great. But yeah,
Wow.
Shark Tank. Just going back to your original question. We, it took a year and a half between season 1 and season 2 before we got renewed, which is a
really?
long time.
Wow,
we weren't
wow.
sure it was going to happen.
Okay.
And then it did, and then it slowly gained more momentum, and then we
Right.
brought Mark Cuban on in season 4, and that's when we kind of exploded.
Oh, yeah?
Just because I think he brought a different
Brand
approach,
name,
a
maybe,
fresher
or-
approach. Everyone knew him a little more than the other sharks,
Sure.
perhaps. Very outspoken.
Do you think the aggressiveness gave it a little bit of more of an edge?
Between him and Mr. Wonderful, you never know. They're very outspoken. So yeah, I think the reason the show is still going so strong is because it speaks to the American people, not just in America, because we are in other countries as well, but the American dream is alive and
American
well.
dream, yes.
We've really kind of made, I said this last night, is when I was growing up, I didn't know what business was. I didn't know what equity was.
Right,
I didn't know I could do that.
Right.
And I'm not doing that now. But, it was kind of almost, in my opinion, where I'm from, looked down upon to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
Or very risky.
Right.
And I think a lot of people now, it's more mainstream and acceptable. And it's kind of the cool thing
Trendy,
to do.
yeah.
Very trendy.
Well, a lot of college kids
Yes.
want to.
They're majoring in
wanna-
entrepreneurship.
You didn't have a program like that when I was
Exactly,
in school. They
yeah.
never heard of such a thing. Well, you mentioned when you were growing up. Tell us, how Maine, you told me last night, from
Yep.
Maine, small town of Maine. I'm from a small town of Wisconsin. How does a girl from Maine end up casting in Hollywood?
I know, it's crazy. I'm from a small town in Maine called Winslow. It's 7,000 people. My parents and my grandparents all live there, still to this day. And I was actually a psychology major my freshman year of college, and then one
Was
night...
that back in Maine? Or?
Back in Maine,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah.
At a 2,000 student
Yeah.
college, very small.
Right.
I was talking to my dad one night on the phone, and one of his cousins, my second, who's since passed away, but he was a vice president of legal affairs at MTV, and all of a sudden it was like, this sounds cliche, a light bulb went on, and I was like, I want to work in film and TV.
Oh, really?
I had no idea.
So it wasn't when you were 4 years old
No.
in your bedroom with a wooden spoon or anything like
No,
that?
I wanted to work at Disney World or
Yeah,
as an
well,
animator.
A little bit of a show business thing back there, maybe.
But no, I never knew I could work in that world or anything.
Yeah.
So I took
You mean there's jobs in that world?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I took a photography course, and then I ended up trying to transfer. I ended up getting into University of Southern California, which is the top film school.
And you went right toward film school then?
Yep.
Yeah.
It took me 3 times to apply to get in because
yeah?
it's so
Yeah.
so hard to get in.
Yeah, I mean, what do you bring from the... Yeah, well, I
I'm
grew
from
up not
Maine.
far
That's
from...
it.
You grew up not far from where Shawshank Redemption was filmed.
Exactly.
I mean,
That was actually filmed in Ohio.
Oh, really? I
And
didn't
I
know
actually
that.
shot a film there as well.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yep.
So you did a little film work before you got on Shark Tank?
Oh, yes. I
Okay,
worked
tell us about
on...
that.
Yeah, so before Shark Tank, I worked on a lot of independent feature films. One of them, it was like a horror film that shot in the same prison the Shawshank Redemption was filmed in.
Yeah.
I worked on Trading Spaces as a production assistant, just painting and sanding.
Okay.
And
Wow.
then I worked on, like you said, I eventually worked on the show Las Vegas with James Caan,
Okay.
which is a scripted show.
Yeah,
I was the
right.
production safety manager, which
Sure.
is not
Safety.
at all what I'm
No,
doing now.
no.
And I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I faced a lot of adversity because I was 23 years old
Wow.
telling these people how to do their job, and
Yeah.
they've been doing their job longer than I've been alive.
That's fine, Missy. Go ahead.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Exactly.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
like, "Oh, you're cute."
Who are you?
Yep.
Go away.
Yep.
Get me my
so
coffee.
it helped, build me into who I am and be able
Sure.
to be a little more outspoken and
Right,
get
right.
some tough skin.
Yeah. Well, I'm
And,
sure you need that in Hollywood, don't you?
Now you do, yes. But eventually I found a job in casting, and I was like, I'll give it a go. And
What was your very first job?
it was a casting assistant.
Yeah.
So bottom of the totem
which
pole.
show?
Oh gosh, that show was called Crowned, the Mother of All Pageants.
Okay.
It was a
Wow.
show on.
So it's a reality show.
It was a reality
Well,
show.
there you go. You're cutting your teeth in the
Yep.
right area.
It was a show about 22 mothers and daughters living in a pink mansion, and we're talking grown
wow.
women, not little girls.
Wow.
And they were competing for money, and it was on this WB or the CW, whichever
Right.
it was. So that was my first taste, and then I went on and I worked on a bunch of other shows, and then eventually Shark Tank came along,
Yeah.
and was fortunate to work on it, and then I've just been on it since, and
Well,
it's been
your
pretty
story,
crazy.
and the reason I have you bring your story up is because, again, we're all about for entrepreneurs out here, and their story is what makes them successful. You know,
Right.
they're not just that they know X, Y, Z
Yep.
and how to find a customer, but their story behind it, right? Well, a person who lives not far from me won an Oscar for editing
Wow.
on Apollo 13, the movie, working for Ron Howard.
Yeah.
His story is that he came from Omaha. He said him and a buddy wanted to do Hollywood.
Yeah.
And they went out there and took the first job they could get. You know what it was? Packing and shipping boxes.
Yep.
And somehow in that environment, they got to know a guy who was an editor for a very up-and-coming guy named Ron Howard. I mean, he was still almost not done being Opie.
Right, yeah.
He was very green, but this guy was the editor for him in Mermaid? I don't know, his first movie or something like that. And these guys got to know him because of the boxing and the shipping. Well, the older guy got on with Ron, and then as he started to work toward retirement, he brought these guys on, and then Mike went on to co-edit.
Yeah.
I don't know how many movies for Ron.
I mean,
all of the movies.
it's really about connections.
Yeah, well,
Once
that's
you
it.
meet people, you use those connections and utilize. If you do a good job, everyone asks, how did you do so? It's just, you got to have a great work ethic and keep going and grinding. And it speaks not just in the business world of like, hey, me finding a job, but to entrepreneurs, you just got to keep going. And eventually it's all about who you know.
Well, and you've... our viewers are about making connections. What advice do you have for people on how to make connections in a tight market or in a kind of a closed market?
Sure. Excuse me. I would say, get out of your comfort zone. As a child, I was very shy. I didn't talk to anyone. Now I'm like very outspoken, obviously.
Yeah.
But I would say just have those little connections, make little conversation, because you never know where it's eventually going to lead.
Right.
I never thought in a million years I'd be working on a show that's in its 11th season, being from Maine.
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. But you just, as long as you keep those connections open and the communication open, and you're kind, I think
That's a good
all
one.
of that goes a really long way.
That's a good one. And to proactively, I hear you
Yes.
proactively do it. I mean,
Absolutely.
just because I'm here doesn't mean anything, because
Right.
there's 1,000 other people who are, or 10,000 other people here, and so that's interesting. Back to that story part. Tell us about how important story is for the people who are pitching. I mean, our people who are growing their businesses. What I find, what I help people with and small companies with, is how to position themselves. Tell us what you've learned about posturing,
gosh.
pitching, and all that over the years. I mean, we only have 4 hours, so
Right.
you have to limit yourself.
I've learned so much. We all joke that we have our Shark Tank MBA because we've learned so much about business from our entrepreneurs. In my opinion, I think that really learning to succinctly be able to pinpoint what makes you different and unique in terms of your business, but also in your personal story. For Shark Tank specifically, we tell everyone it's 50% about your business and 50% about your backstory. All the sharks are self-made. None of them had anything, given to them on a silver platter.
Right.
Mark Cuban always talks about eating, ketchup and mustard sandwiches and ramen and sharing a
noodles,
room
yeah.
with like 5 guys or
Sure,
whatever.
sure.
And Barbara
Was a waitress.
was a waitress.
Yeah,
Damon's dyslexic.
She got like a $1,000
so
loan
she
from
did.
somebody and turned that into I think she sold her company for $80 or $90 million.
Yeah, it's pretty
or something.
amazing. And like Damon's dyslexic, but those never stopped them.
Yeah, yeah.
You can still pursue and keep going. So for me, when they're coming in for Shark Tank, we want to know their backstory just as much, because all the sharks ask, hey, how did you come up with this? And everyone
They always
usually
say, what's your background?
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
usually, in my experience, is the reason why they're coming up with what their business or product is because of something that happened.
Yeah.
And we want to know what that is.
Well, last night at the party, festival, whatever, gala, that I was here.
Yep.
The woman who has Jacob's, or not Jacob.
Jackson's
Jackson,
Honest.
Jackson,
Yes.
yeah, Honest. Tell that story a little bit.
So Jackson's Honest, Megan and her husband Scott, they have 4 children. One of them unfortunately passed away, Jackson. he was born with an autoimmune disorder that he wasn't diagnosed with until he was about 14.
Yeah.
And for them, it was trying to find food that was anti-inflammatory that he could eat to help him a little bit. So they went into their kitchen and just started experimenting with all kinds of saturated fats, which is obviously the opposite of what we're supposed to eat.
We're told that.
And so they started experimenting and making chips because Megan was craving something salty, and she just started making homemade chips. She made them in coconut oil, and they had him for Jackson, and it ended up helping him to an extent. And then they was like, okay, well, there's something here.
Somebody else might want this too.
And so they ended up, long story short, they got into Whole Foods in the Rocky Mountain region, and then eventually they came on Shark Tank. They did a deal with Rohan Oza, and now they've blown up since. But their whole story would never have, their whole business probably wouldn't have happened without their whole backstory, which is trying to help their son and their mission.
Well,
which is a lot of entrepreneurs, is they're on a mission to do either solve something or find something or do something.
There were other stories with that too last night and all over Shark Tank. It's just entrepreneurs out there, just remember that it sounds trite. Find a need and fill it, but sometimes they even create a need. Have you ever seen stories like that?
All the time.
For instance, what? I mean, give our viewers some inspiration.
That one's putting me on the spot.
Yeah, it's not fair. Yeah, I mean, I read a story about the whole idea of the internet. I mean, no one before it was even here. Well, I need that. Well, it didn't exist.
Exactly.
That's a pretty general example, but things like that. What needs are out there that you can create? Can you create a category? I heard something about that recently as well. Well, and so you how do you like Hollywood after Quiet Maine?
Hollywood is not for everyone. It takes some adjustment. I don't know that I will live in LA for the rest of my life. There is something to be said when you're in a small town, and when you're a teenager, you're like, oh, I hate it. I don't want to be here. But now I really appreciate how I was brought up with my parents, and it did, and kind of kept me grounded. So LA's fun. I leave it enough that I can appreciate it. I like traveling, and obviously I love meeting everyone that I get to meet. But Hollywood is interesting. LA in general, and probably this speaks to many cities also, is you just want to find people that are solid, good, real people.
And there may be some there that aren't.
And there's some that are questionable. But I'm sure that's everywhere.
You talk about travel. How often do you go out and do these things? And we got to look back here.
I know.
There's that long line. Do you know how many people are pitching today?
Well, I know that earlier we handed out over 100 wristbands, so that's probably like 150, 200.
Wow.
But we're still handing out wristbands, we could hit over 200.
Come on down.
So exactly. We'll probably be gone at this point.
Yeah,
but
I'm sure.
We travel. Last year we did 12 open calls across the country.
12, okay.
This year, because we have Arkansas next week, and we have Louisville and New York City coming up as well. That'll put us at 10 this year.
Wow.
And that's pretty much between January and now. So we travel a lot.
It sounds like a ton. I'm an entrepreneur. I want to pitch. I miss one of these events. I mean, what percentage of the people apply online and get considered versus something from one of these?
Absolutely. Great question. So the nice thing about Shark Tank is if you aren't able to make an open call, you can always apply online. We take more people apply online than they do at an open call.
Sure.
But it's level playing field. It's, people think, I have to be in person to get FaceTime and everything. It doesn't make a difference. We can call you on the phone and talk to you.
Do the pitches online, do they include a video then? Or?
Nope, not at that point.
Oh, really?
Nope. Okay. It's just kind of more like, here's our website, here's information, and then we call them, and we, much like here, we ask them a couple questions, get to know them and their business. And then we tell the producers, and if they want to move forward, then they eventually will make a video. But it's level playing field. It just takes us longer to get through the online submissions because they've been backed up since July last year.
Oh, boy. Yeah, wow. Well, get to a casting call. A little more in person there.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, I got to ask this for a couple people I know. Some of the people that come on the show have just an idea. Mm-hmm. They don't really have a revenue model. They don't have an existing business. Explain that a little bit. I mean, is there space for you to consider that kind of thing? I would think you would want the proven models.
We don't necessarily have to have a proven model. It's more of the kind of the bare minimum is at least a working prototype. A great example would be the Comfy. Two gentlemen from Denver, Colorado, and they made this kind of like, I have one. It's amazing. It's this giant hoodie sweatshirt that comes down past your knees.
I remember that one.
It was airing last year, and it's sheepskin on the inside, and it's so soft, and you can like bundle up and like cover up.
But it's not cold in Hollywood.
Listen, I still use them.
You give it to all your Maine relatives.
No, I have it. I kept it. It can get cold.
Yeah, okay.
But they came in just with prototypes. They had no sales.
Really?
They came in with 4 prototypes. They didn't even have 5 to give to the sharks.
Oh,
so
no.
they came in with 4 and said, you got to share them.
Who didn't get a prototype?
I think they eventually all just took them on and off.
Okay,
but
gotcha.
they ended up doing a deal with Barbara. And I think, and I have to double check the numbers, but I think they did over 40 million in sales in 1 year since they aired on Shark Tank, which is
Are you kidding?
insane. I'm serious.
With zero revenue and hardly any prototypes.
Yes, they had a jingle, they had a dance, they were 2 lovable guys, but at the end of the day, they had a great product. And I think they had they had invested a lot. I don't know off the top of my head if they had moved in with their family or with their parents or whatnot, but they were married and had kids and everything.
Wow.
And again, you don't have to have
40 million.
40 million.
Well, tell briefly about the Shark Tank effect. I mean, we from Omaha, Nebraska, we had the people from
E-Creamery. Yep.
They got turned down because who would ever think of sending an $18 bucket of ice cream to somebody?
It's really good ice cream, though.
Yeah, exactly. It is. I've had it. And but yet, well, you tell the rest.
Yeah, I mean, the Shark Tank effect is pretty amazing. I'm still shocked by it 11 years in. We tell everyone, even if you come in and don't get a deal with a shark, there's still 5 to 7 million viewers that watch our show. You never know what's going to happen. And
5 to 7 million?
Yeah, between real time and then streaming.
That's a heck of a infomercial.
Oh, yes. Well, it's a 9 to 12 minute segment all about your company.
I mean, that's amazing in prime time. And then
prime time.
I think even more value is, it's there and it's gone, but sometimes I'm busy on a Friday night.
Right.
DVR.
DVR.
I mean, I've got all of them saved on my DVR, or most of them, and I've seen that one before, but just a repetition.
Yes, DVR and then streaming, because there's a lot of cord cutters out there now. And everything, but no, I mean, kind of our big success stories, Scrub Daddy, everyone knows Scrub Daddy.
Crazy.
Aaron has done, I believe, $180 million in sales.
Yeah, wow.
The Simply Fit board ladies, they've done I think over 180, or maybe they hit 2 million at this, or 200 million at this point.
Oh, I love last night the cutter
line cutters.
Line cutters. Tell what that is. That's a most simple, obvious thing, and this guy's created an industry.
Vance was just trying to figure out how to cut fishing line and not rip his teeth out, essentially, and came up with a ring that has a little hook on it to rip it. And he ended up doing a deal with Damon, who loves to fish. Right. And he's blown up, and now he's expanding into other products.
Sewing industries and all that. And talk about a guy with passion and so on.
And he went through the flooding and everything in Houston. They've all been through it.
No, it's some amazing stories, and again, it's about the stories, and I love the rags to riches stories, and some of those people have had existing companies that have gone up and beyond too.
Oh yes.
And the bottom line, we were talking about the Shark Tank effect, the whole idea of just that exposure and repeat exposure. I mean, put Lori. Competitive to Lori's QVC, whatever, the infomercial to die for, right?
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up, Mindy, tell us, kind of again, give the people watching some more hope for how to bundle themselves up, pitch themselves, and just how to make them differentiate from other people as they go out there and spread their entrepreneurial wings.
Absolutely. I think the best advice for me to give everyone is, be really succinct in your pitch. Know your numbers, because they're always going to come up and ask.
Good point. Yeah. I'm sorry I interrupted
That's
you,
okay.
but the man, I forgot his name, with the meats, Echo Valley.
Dave.
Yeah, and he was on twice.
Dave was on twice. It's a rare thing. We don't really do that very often. He came in the first time. He got a little grilled. He didn't get any offers, and Mr. Wonderful was like, you don't know your customer acquisition costs.
Right, yeah.
So Dave used it as a challenge. He went back, and then a couple of years later, we reached back out and said, what are your numbers now? Can we get an update? And he came back in, and he knew his numbers this time.
Yeah.
He was prepared.
How long between the 2 episodes?
Probably a year or two,
okay,
I think.
Yeah.
And he knew his numbers.
Yeah.
And he ended up doing a deal with Mark Cuban.
Right. And another story about him and his daughter and all that kind of thing.
Yes, unfortunately, his daughter passed away.
Yeah, I mean, his product wasn't necessarily related to that.
Correct.
But the adversity so many people go through. And so if you're fighting that battle out there and saying, I'm going to give up, watch a few episodes of Shark Tank. Mindy has found some great stories. I mean, do you ever say, "Oh, this pitch is okay, but the story is great, and so we're gonna do this"?
Absolutely. You know, because again, the sharks will always ask, and sometimes they'll look at the entrepreneur and say, I see myself in you, or your story resonates with me. And so they'll invest, not necessarily based just on that, but sometimes that's an overarching or more compelling thing to pull them in than just the product. So, you know, sometimes Barbara does it all the time. She's like, I like you. Like to her entrepreneurs, she very much likes it. And then, so it's you never know what they're going to look for and invest in, but that's what keeps it exciting.
Well, that's fun. Mindy, I'm so glad that you spared the time. We've got a lot going on here today. Got 150 people pitching. You've got things going right and left, and so glad that you made time. So glad that you came to Nebraska.
We're very excited.
Thanks again to the Angler. Tell me, make me say it correctly.
Angler. Yes,
Institute.
the Angler program has been fantastic
Part
bringing
of
us
the
here.
University of Nebraska Lincoln program, entrepreneurial focus. They're working on some grant money and helping people like Kelly back there with her studies. So,
no, it's really been great.
Yeah, it's an awesome program, and thanks so much for coming to Nebraska.
Thank you.
And the best of wishes to you and your travels.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure.
We will see you next episode of the Grow Your Biz Show. Until then, go out and grow something.